Hey guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow and I am back with another video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read on JFK and Jackie O. And yeah, we're gonna go there. We are also going to explore the circumstances of what happened with his murder. So if this sounds like an interesting topic to you, please stick around. And if not, I will catch you at a different video. So here we go. First of all, Mercury is officially in retrograde, which means communication is wonky. So this is the second time I'm recording this video. Let's hope it comes out better than the first time. And even if it doesn't, it's going to get uploaded anyway. Because, you know, the show must go on whether or not the video is perfect or not. Okay, so very, very interestingly, first of all, about both Jackie O and JFK is the way in which their souls have evolved and changed, both in their incarnations through the experiences that they had endured, as well as, well, for Jackie O, more what had happened on the other side for her. But both of them have experienced these huge, monumental soul growth experiences. JFK's was when he was actually alive. So we're going to start by talking about him. Then we're going to talk about Jackie O. We're going to talk about their relationship. And then we're going to talk about what actually happened with his murder. So JFK, very, very interestingly, well, okay, it's a funny kind of place to start, but it's a kind of funny, thing to say we're talking about people's energy that we can't see. It's nebulous. It's like gravity. We can't see it, but it's real. So it's kind of funny. The whole thing is kind of funny. So is it any funnier to say this is like a funny place where I'm going to pick up his energy? I don't know. But this is the funny place where I'm going to pick up and start with his energy, which is that JFK, whatever we think we may have known about what was going on when he was in the White House is all true. Homeboy was a womanizer, for lack of a better word. But here's why he was a womanizer. He genuinely and truly loved women. He loved a woman's body, but it was more than just her body. First of all, he was a leg man. He loved a woman's legs. He loved walking behind a woman and looking at the shape of her legs. He just loved it. But that's very, very shallow. And he was not a shallow, one-dimensional character. So why did he genuinely love women? He loved having a relationship with a woman, and he loved having a woman fall in love with him. And this is going to sound horrible, but I'm going to explain it. He also, very much after he had women fall in love with him, he also felt he had to completely disconnect and leave them. He was a little bit of a heartbreaker. Now, why was he a heartbreaker? It's actually very much connected to how he became president, which is that JFK did not have these grand goals and aspirations and dreams where he wanted to be president. This was more his father. His father was the force, the man behind the man, so to say. These were more his father's goals, aspirations, and dreams. And he was pushing his son into this so he could live vicariously through his son. Now, as maybe you can imagine, when somebody has this kind of an experience with a parent, where the parent is not necessarily taking into account the desires, hopes, and dreams of yourself, but they're more crafting who they think you should be, that can end up leaving a big energetic chink in your armor, where you feel like you are not loved for who you are. You are not valued and appreciated for who you genuinely are. It's more where the love of your caretakers is conditional upon you doing what they want you to do and in being who they want you to be. And that is very much what happened with JFK. So because of that, he had this energetic chink in his armor, and that led to a insecure attachment style. And that's why he really, really loved when women would love him, and why he wanted to be with them. But because he had this insecure attachment style, he also felt like once they got to know him, they would think that he was unworthy of love, just like he felt unworthy of love with his parents, because they didn't invest in getting to know the real him and the things that he genuinely wanted. So that is why he was such a womanizer. Yes, he loved women. He loved being with women. He genuinely also did like the attention that he got from women. And it did not end once he was in the White House. But the motivation and the reason behind it is what I found to be particularly interesting. Now, for him also, because the love of his parents, or more specifically, I would say his father, felt very conditional, where he had to be a certain person in order to be valuable in his father's eyes, he felt it was like kind of being on this train that he couldn't get off of. His father was the conductor of the train. And the way that it was shown to me is like, imagine if he was standing still and there's all of this movement and motion and wind all around him. And then I would even liken it to like, let's say like, I don't know why this is coming up. It's so funny. It's coming up right now. This interview I had seen with Paula Abdul and, what was his name? Not Enrique Iglesias. Emilio Estefan? I think Emilio Estefan. So they were married for a very, very short amount of time. They had been dating, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, guys. This is just what's coming in. And it feels like my guides are bringing it to me. I'm like, okay, as I've spoken about, when the guides bring you the goods, you go with it. We don't want to pinch it off and be like, no, thanks, I got this, I'm good. Bring me the goods. Okay. So Paula Abdul and Emilio Estefan, I don't know. They were married for a short amount of time. And there was a video that I had seen with Paula Abdul where she had said they were dating for a long amount of time, and then then it was like, okay, what's next? So they got engaged, and then it was like, okay, I guess we should get married now. And it wasn't even necessarily where they felt like they were like, this is my forever person. It wasn't like that. It was more like they got kind of like swept up in everything. And it was like, okay, so what's like the next logical step? We've been together. I guess let's get married. So very, very similarly to that was that JFK felt very, very like swept up in all of this. And sure, it felt nice and it felt good for people to give him this attention and to say, yes, they thought that he would be a great president. But it never ever really felt like this was his life and that he was the conductor of his own train. He was a passenger on a train. He was not his own conductor. His father was the conductor of his train. His father was conducting his train and JFK's train. Now, his soul glow up really, really happened once he became president. And it wasn't like an overnight thing. It wasn't like the first day he stepped into the Oval Office and he sat at that desk and he was like, I'm my own man. No. It was kind of this slow evolution where he was coming to understand that even though he was now president, the expectation was still where there was other people that were going to be running the show. He was like a front man, if you will. He was like the face of the business, but the business was actually run by, the people that were in the office. He was a nice face of the business, but he wasn't the business. And what I also found very interesting about his energy was that he had this remarkable ability to compartmentalize things. And for anyone who is not familiar with what this term or idea of what compartmentalization is where something can be going on, and if somebody has the ability, it's like walking out of a room. They leave the room and whatever they're dealing with stays in that room, and they can go about their day and go about their life. And if you didn't know what was going on in their life and you ran into them, you would never know. So there's some people who wear their hearts on their sleeves and wear their emotions. And if something is going on with them, even if you don't know what it is, you know something's going on. And then there's people who you would never know. He was a never knower. That's why he was able to have relationships with women even after he was president. He might have been having like an intense meeting in the Oval Office, and then he'd walk out of the Oval Office and he'd see like a secretary with this nice legs walking by, and like that's where his mind would go. And that's why he was able to have even once he was married, why he was able to have relationships with other women, because he was compartmentalizing it. He wasn't with his wife back then. He was with, at that moment, he was with somebody else. It wasn't done. And here's the thing, in looking at his energy, he wasn't like a psychopath. He wasn't like a narcissist. There was like nothing really genuinely, truly unlovable about him. What was going on for him was so deeply connected to his childhood in feeling that he was unlovable. And in feeling that in order to survive, he had to put parts of himself away. And that led to him being very good at compartmentalizing. It wasn't done with malicious intent. It wasn't like he didn't love his wife and that's why he was doing this. It had nothing to do with that. Now, interestingly, Jackie O had similar energetic chinks in her armor, if you will, that made them a compatible match. So when looking at her energy, it was shown to me as if she had a very, very rich fantasy life. She had a very, very rich inner world in which she could pull things from. And she also had a remarkable ability to tune things out. So if something was unpleasant, if something was uncomfortable, if there was a conversation going on around her and she just didn't want to hear it, she could tune it out. Now, her developing this particular skill was also connected, if you can guess, to her childhood as well. And it was, even though it was not something she really wanted to spend a lot of time looking at, it was more that she was kind of acknowledging it was due to the dynamics of her parents' relationship, and in her feeling like she was not loved for who she was as well. I think she has a sister, or she had a sister that was a few years older than her. She always felt like she was living in her little sister's, she felt like she was living in her bigger sister's shadow. So she felt like her, who she was also not validated, she didn't even feel like she was really seen. So she felt like she had a lot of things to prove. And if something was going on that just felt uncomfortable, she would just tune it out. That set up for a great love match between these two. Because first of all, she recognized that she wasn't going to do better than him. He was good looking. He was charismatic. He was well-spoken. It seemed like he was going places. And that was very validating for her. Because she needed the external validation to assure her that she was worthy. And that happened because that was something that she did not receive as a child. So she really, really latched onto him. And because, again, she had this remarkable ability to tune out what she did not want to see, she was very, very good at not acknowledging that perhaps he had other girlfriends once they were dating, and even, for sure it was happening once they were married, but she was tuning it out, and it was something that she did not want to recognize and she did not want to see. So she had this remarkable ability to just act as if it did not happen. She loved him as well. She genuinely loved him. He genuinely loved her too. They did love each other, but their baggage, unresolved issues and baggage from their childhood very much made up the fabrics of who they became later on in their life. Now, JFK had his ultimate glow up once he became president. And again, it wasn't like this overnight, he's in the Oval Office, he sat down at the desk, he touched the desk, and he's like, I'm the man. But it was this realization for him that even though he was now the president and he was like the face of the nation, he was still expected to take orders from somebody else. But the gravity of being in that office was really what helped his soul evolve, and what really actually did help him become the man that he was meant to be. And it came in very, very clearly that there was one point where he had said, I am not going to be your patsy anymore. And it was specific to that word. So there's this expectation that he was going to be the patsy. And it was shown to me almost as if, and not in a negative, destructive way, but like imagine in the, the movies, the Hulk, or the cartoons, where you kind of see him expanding, and he's getting bigger, and his muscles are growing, and there's all of these tears in the fabric of his shirt as he's expanding and he's getting larger. That is what was very much happening for JFK, where he was energetically expanding and getting larger. And once the energy shifts, that is something that everybody around you will feel. And it's kind of like a dog smelling fear. You could pretend that you're not afraid, but if you're afraid, the dog is going to smell it on you. So if he had not been so fully resolute and committed to no longer being the patsy and making positive changes in the world, he would have still been pushed around. Maybe he would have even still, lived to a ripe old age. But it was because energetically he was showing up differently, that they understood he was different. And when he said he was no longer going to be the patsy, he meant it. We're going to pause him for a moment, and we're going to now bring all of these pieces together. So for anybody that was, for all of these years, might have been suspicious if the United States government may have been involved in the takedown of JFK, which is actually even starting, interestingly, which is also starting to be suggested right now, because here's why. For all of the presidential administrations, the presidents have had an opportunity, I think starting in 2000 with Bill Clinton, they have had the opportunity to unseal all of the information that's pertaining to JFK's murder. But they have all, for one reason or another, they have all decided not to. And it's actually even kind of funny at this point, because, and here's why. First of all, any of the people that might have been involved are long gone. In addition to that, the reason that I think that they gave this time around with this administration for why, and I'm even just laughing thinking about it, for why they're not actually even going to release the documentation, is because there are supposed safe houses, and the safe houses, and I'll talk about what a safe house is if it's a term that somebody's not familiar with, but these safe houses are so coveted and they're so supposedly safe that they cannot disclose the location or any of the information about these safe houses. And apparently the location or information about the safe houses are in the documents that they can't release. Okay, so first of all, the United States government is really, really good at releasing information where things have been redacted. So here's an idea, just redact the safe house locations, but no. Now, what is an actual safe house? A safe house is like, let's say you're in a foreign country and you have ops or agents that are in that country, and the shit hits the fan, and now their location or their identity is known, and you need to get them into a safe house and fast. That is what a safe house is. It's a location that is so private and so unknown that only, like, let's say the agents that are there, or maybe even like one other person, will know about their location. So that way, if they need to get out fast, they can slip into one of these safe houses. I think maybe they have like all of this like appearance altering things that are in safe houses. Maybe they even have like alternate identifications for these people, so they can really like they can slink away into these safe houses. They can alter their appearance, and then they can leave maybe like a week or so later when things calm down with a whole new appearance and identity. I think that is the essence of what a safe house is. So they are saying that there are safe houses that are still operational at this time, now, all of these years later, and that these safe houses are so safe and secure that it would be a matter of absolute national security to release the information pertaining to it. Okay. So that's why they're not releasing it even now. Now, for anybody who is curious, so follow me, because again, I'm going to try to circumvent this by speaking in code. So we have what's referred to in the United States as the alphabet agencies. The alphabet agencies are 3-letter agencies in the United States, because I know I have subscribers that are watching from other countries. That's why I'm explaining this. So we have these agencies in the United States, and they do different things for the country. So one of them has these 3 letters. There's an F in the beginning, there's an I at the end, and in the middle is an I. Wait, did I say that right? There's an F in the beginning, an I at the end, and a B in the middle. I told you guys it's Mercury in retrograde. Okay, that's one of our agencies. It's an alphabet agency. It has 3 letters, okay? And they supposedly handle like things that are going on in, like, I don't know, I think one of the agencies does like things going on in our country, and one does things going on in other countries. It's all just like a front for what they're actually doing. Now, the other agency is also an alphabet agency. Their letters are a little bit different. Their letters are a C in the beginning, an A at the end, and an I in the middle. So that's the agency that was involved in taking out JFK. And here's why. Again, energetically, he was showing up differently. He had this energetic glow up. He was owning his inner Hulk, his inner power for the good. And he actually had made a speech with, maybe some of you have actually seen this, where he had been speaking about secret societies. And that in a free democracy like the United States, there is no place for secret societies. So that was him banging the drum and making this announcement be known. What was his intention? He wanted to dismantle the corruption that was going on in these agencies. And if you were somebody that was corrupt in one of these agencies, you would damn sure make sure that that was not actually going to happen. Because these agencies are actually a lot more powerful than we might have believed them to have been. And I'm going to go off on a brief tangent, but I actually think this brief tangent is really, really interesting, and that's why I'm going to go off on it, which is to discuss what the actual origins of one of the agencies I had mentioned, which now I'll say what it is. It's the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And the beginning, or how it first had come to be, was, and I don't remember his name, and if you watch my videos, that should probably be no surprise for you. I very rarely remember names, but, and especially because I wasn't thinking I was going to go off on this tangent beforehand, but it just came to me, and it seems like very relevant. So the person who had started it, or who was first involved with it, was actually how he was able to stay in that position for so long. He had been in it for a very, very long time. And it was because he was actually gathering information, and he was using agents to gather information on anybody that might have wanted to have gotten him out of office, or would have wanted to somehow be a threat to his position of power that he had had. So he was collecting information on all of these people, so that way if anyone ever came to him and they were like, time's up, you've been in this office for too long, he would just like very slyly slide an envelope to them. And in the envelope would be all of these photographs that, I mean, he was basically blackmailing people with all of the evidence that he had accumulated on them. So that's the origin and the genealogy of one of the alphabet agencies. So it was always from the beginning was a misuse of power, where the actual origin of it was where someone was using the agents not to do things for the actual country, but to assure and establish that he himself would remain in power. So all of the origins of these agencies are kind of shady to begin with. And once they're shady to begin with, as we've talked about all the time, that changes the vibration. So even if, let's say, the intentionality behind these things were for the national security of the United States, that changed very, very quickly, because as I'm sure you guys have heard this, power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the more power somebody has, and the more hidden that power is, the more corrupt, or the more, let's say the more potential there is for the evolution of absolute corruption in that person's character. And then the absolute corruption in that person's character will change the expression of what the organization may have been. So even if it was once with the intention of good, positive things, we're gonna keep our citizens safe or whatever it is, it became corrupted very, very easily and very, very early on. And once there's already corruption that is in the foundation of something, it is in the, that's what it is. It's coming in as like a house right now. If you are building a house and the foundation is not secure, that house will forever not be on secure footing. So because the origin of this agency was that way, the expression of it was always going to be that way. I don't have an equally interesting story about the other alphabet agency, I'm sorry. But even though I don't have an exciting story about them, just look what they have done. They took out a duly elected American president. So that's your exciting story on that alphabet agency. Okay, so for anyone, yes, let's just bring in all of those pieces together. For anyone who is actually curious, if they were actually involved, the answer is yes. Okay, the cabal doesn't like to be threatened. They also, again, because power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, they like to hold on to their power because they're very, very powerful. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about the fallout from that and what that meant for Jackie O and what that meant for the country. Now, you might be wondering, could they have not taken him out in a fashion that was less dramatic, one could say, or less traumatizing? And the answer is an unequivocal yes. Of course they could have. But here's the thing. That doesn't send a strong enough message. You want to send a really, really, really strong message, you got to go big or you got to go home. And as you know, they're not going to go home. They had to go so big that it was traumatizing, not only for Jackie O, but for the entire country. Because as I had mentioned in the video with Princess Diana, ask anybody in our generation where they were when they heard that Princess Diana was dead, will remember it. That's our generation's version of JFK. Go to your parents, go to that generation and ask them where they were when they heard. They will all be able to tell you down to like the most minute detail of where they were, what they were doing, how they felt, who they were with, all of it. Because it was so dramatic and it was so traumatizing. And it was done very much that way intentionally to send such a big message that for anybody else that was going to decide to go rogue and want to go their own way and do their own thing, it had to be such a big message to say no, because this is what happens to you if you do. Now, that's on the one hand. And because this is a Behind the Veil channel, let's also talk about what that looked like on an energetic level. Loosh, baby. Lots and lots of loosh. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with what loosh is the fuel and the food for the entities that live on the astral realm. So you get out of Earth, there's a whole astral realm. There's both malevolent and benevolent beings that are there. And and I always confuse the two, I'm not even going to say it, for the entities that do not have our good interest in mind. They live off of our loosh. And our loosh is our energy, our attention, our emotions, our focus, our concentration. It's our output. But it's not like I'm working in a factory and at the end of the day, here, I have a card to show. I made a card today. It's not that kind of an output. It's not a physical expression. It is an energetic and emotional expression. It's like gravity. It's what you can't see, but yet we're not all floating off into space. So it's the same thing. It's all of, like if there's a national tragedy, it's where all of our focus and concentration is going. And that is what Loosh is. It's almost like, here's another way of looking at it. It's almost like sweat, right? Sweat, it's like if you're doing a particularly hard workout, your body is going to sweat. And then the release of that odor, you could almost look at it as if that is a form of Loosh. But it's not odor. It's what are you giving your attention and your focus to? It's the release of the things that are inside of you. So you have this very, very traumatic event that happened that affected not just people in the United States, although arguably you could say much more in the United States, but it was a worldwide thing. So it's this huge release of all of that attention and focus and mourning and grief. And this was like the end of Camelot. They were looked up to as like the next coming of Camelot. This was like this fantasy, this beautiful family. He was so handsome. She was so beautiful. They have such cute kids. It's Camelot. It was this fantasy. And it was the destruction of the fantasy. And that's why this had to be done on such a massive global scale. It was the production of massive amounts of Loosh. It was to send a very, very big message now that he had banged his drum and he let it be known what his intention was because he had this energetic glow up. It was, we got to shut this down and we got to shut it down big. So nobody else is going to decide to go rogue. Now, what that did personally to Jackie O was this, she had a different kind of a energetic glow up, but it was more of like an energetic blow up. Here's why. So just like in the beginning of the video, I was saying that she had this very rich fantasy life and she had this remarkable ability. I don't know why those words always trip me up, but she had this remarkable ability to tune out things that were uncomfortable for her. So she never fully lived in reality. She always was kind of like living in her own internal world, her own fantasy world. But then this happened, and this destroyed the illusion of the life that she was trying to live. So it was almost as if it was not an explosion, it was an implosion, where her entire world came caving down on inside of her. She became a semi-neurotic mother after this. She was always worried something was going to happen to her children. Not to her. She would have been very, very happy if she did not have to live another day after this. This was the kind of thing that like she would see in her nightmares for years. This is the kind of thing that she would maybe have respite and peace for 3 seconds in the morning when she would first wake up. And then the first thought that came into her mind was what she had seen. You can go back and you can watch the footage for anyone who hasn't seen it. It's still very readily available. They were driving in a open, in a convertible, in an open top car, in, I believe it was Dallas. They were driving through Dallas, and there was a supposed lone gunman, and he had actually like set himself up somewhere, and he had shot JFK. And so he was killed in front of her. Even if he was alive when they were like taking him to the hospital, like watch the footage, like he was shot in the head. So she was like covered in blood. And this is really not the kind of thing that somebody is going to forget. It is very horrific, especially if you're there and it's like your husband. And even if you have this illusion of what your relationship is, and even if you don't want to confront that he was not faithful to you for the duration of your marriage, she still loved him. It's still her husband. He was still shot in front of her. So this was very much the implosion of her own personal world and her own personal beliefs. She was able to, on some level, put one foot in front of the other. She was able to find some level of contentment. I would not say necessarily happiness, because this was like this is again like the toilet paper that's attached to your shoe that you're dragging around with you. So even if it was something that she didn't want to regularly confront or think about or acknowledge or recognize, lady, you may not be looking at your shoe, you still got toilet paper on it. So this was something energetically that was still attached to her and was attached to her for the rest of her days. Now, interestingly enough, what was also shown to me was that, first of all, once they had crossed over, it was very interesting as well. Okay, so first of all, I know I keep saying first of all, sorry. But first of all, what happened with JFK after he had crossed over was he was like, peace out, see ya, I'm gone. Heal me, God, you can do whatever. This has cut out whatever remaining incarnations that I had. I'm done, peace out, see ya. He is long the fuck gone. And here's why energetically he's long the fuck gone. Imagine you had a friend in high school that always brought like a stinky lunch. Maybe it was like garlic sticks, and he always had like stinky breath. So then he was always known throughout high school as John with the stinky breath. And even like 20 years later at the high school reunion, people are talking about John with the stinky breath, but he doesn't have stinky breath anymore. But he will forever be known as John with the stinky breath. Energetically, that's what JFK was known as. Not that John with the stinky breath. He was known as one of the presidents who got assassinated. He did not want to be sticking around to have that. So when he crossed over, it's not like he was spending time with his kids or visiting with Jackie O. It was like, God, I did my thing. I lived up to the obligation of what I was brought here to do. Release me. He didn't want to be anywhere near the sphere and the energy of Earth any longer. So he peaced out and he was gone. So his energy was long gone by the time Jackie O crossed over. That was fine for her. Because she had all of those years that she was alive in which she had to make peace with the fact that he had been killed. And for her to, here's the thing, even her not understanding what the true motivation of it was, right? For all we know, she very much believed the story it was like a lone gunman. But even with that, that was enough. And she had all those years that she had to live with this idea, this notion that one lone gunman hated her husband so much that he actually like killed him. So she had to make peace with that over the entire duration of her lifetime. So when she crossed over, she didn't even want to see him because she had to get used to this idea of him being gone. So for her, the experience when she crossed over was like, imagine, and it's going to sound funny, but imagine like a cosmic flea market. I don't know if you have like a flea market where you live. A flea market is like this outdoor, usually like in a parking lot or something. For me, it's like in a high school over here. But there's like, they set up all like these little vendors with their little booths come and they're all selling different things. And then like whatever you're selling, you kind of are like, you know, if you're selling like your homemade jewelry with your like the homemade jewelry people. If you're selling like furniture, you're in like the furniture section. If you're selling clothing, you're with the clothing people. If you've got like your plants, so it's all kind of like delineated by sections. So imagine that like on a cosmic scale. So when you cross over and you're on the other side, there's like a cosmic flea market where there's all these different things that you can like get to go and experience. Do you want to go and look at the Akashic records? Do you want to learn all the mysteries of the universe that were, you know, when you were alive, they were not available to you? Do you want to like see everything you've ever wanted to know, every question you've ever had answered? Do you want to spend time with your family? Do you want to spend time with like, you know, loved ones? Do you want to spend time with like God? There's all of these like cool different areas that your soul can get to enjoy on the other side. So for her experience in this cosmic flea market was, I just want to go and I want to sit with God and I just want to be fucking healed. She did not want to spend time with her family. She did not want to see the loved ones that she had that had crossed over. She did not want to learn the secrets of the universe. She did not even want to like because here's the thing, like imagine you could watch a movie of your life and you could see it without the emotion, but very objectively, really as if you're watching a movie. She didn't want that. She was like, I lived it. It was enough. And just like when she was alive, she didn't really ever fully like live in her own reality. When she crossed over, she very much did not want to like accept that this was the reality of her soul's journey. I'm going to explain what that means. As I've explained in some of my other videos, we are not like hapless victims in our life here, right? It's not like we're pinballs in a pinball machine and we're just getting knocked around by like random shit that happens. No. Before we come into any particular incarnation, we agree to the experiences that we will have, and we will agree to the lessons that we are going to learn. Like, what's the takeaway in this incarnation going to be? So the experiences that we have, they're hard. Look, to be alive is to endure. It's a hardship, right? We all have hardships. We all have grief. We all have things that have been so monumental and huge that it becomes like a benchmark in our life. But those are everything. Those benchmarks, we all agreed to them before we came into these incarnations. It doesn't take away our free will, right? Like, I had free will when I sat down this morning. What time did I want to record my video? And like, what video did I want to talk about? And how did I want to do my makeup? And what shirt was I going to wear? But maybe one of the big things in my incarnation was that I was going to find my voice and I was going to speak my truth. It doesn't take away the free will that we have. It's just to say that the big overarching themes in our life, both, I don't want to use the word good or bad because they're so subjective, but the hardships and the successes that we have, maybe those are all the big overarching themes in our life. So no, we're not hapless victims. The hardships that we have endured, it's not like, oh shit, it just happened. No, that's one of the reasons that we agreed to come into this incarnation. Now, Jackie O, homegirl, fashionable as she was so stubborn and so obstinate, just like she had been when she was alive, and this is unpleasant for me, I'm tuning it out. She did not want to accept that this was one of her sole purposes in being here. It was just too painful for her to accept that this was a soul contract and an agreement that she had had before she came into this life. So I thought that was very, very interesting because, you know, here's the thing. When I first started doing this work like a couple of years ago, the way it was first, and probably because, you know, it's nuanced, it's layers. And the more I do this work, the more clear all of it starts to become. But where initially it was shown to me, like, there are these souls, they're really excited, they want to come down to earth, they want to have these experiences, right? It's like the wild, wild west. Other souls that they have spoken to are like, man, that earth place, it's wild. So any soul that comes here is really, really excited, even though in between our incarnations, our memory gets wiped and we don't remember other lifetimes or what we're here to learn, or that we even came here and agreed to come here to learn things. So I just thought when I was first starting out, cool, like when we die, our soul just goes on to another place. And then more has started to come out where I'm realizing that the experiences that we have in our connection to Earth, even though once we're done here, like JFK, we could be like, peace out, I'm done, but we can also stick around. And that's why for anyone who has lost a loved one, you know when you feel your loved one, it's because they're sticking around with us, right? Like they're looking out for us. They want to keep an eye on us. Maybe they're, you know, part of our vibe tribe. They're our guides. They're our guardian angels. But there's other things that can happen here as well before we peace out. It's like, hey, cool. Like I have access to every question I've ever had. Every question I've ever had. I can see replays of all of my lives, and I can understand what was the message for them or what was the purpose in it, that's like so cool. It's so fantastic. So it's like, there really is like this cool cosmic flea market once we cross over. So I just love that. I think that's so cool. I think that everything that we have maybe thought is real, but we never had like the confirmation of it. Whatever you think it could be, I want to hear what you think there is and comment down below, because I think that that's wild. Like and I also would like to kind of like end the video on a positive note where it's not like, this is a little bit of like a heavy, dense kind of topic. So let's like frame it in a positive way. Let's talk about like all of the cool mysteries that like we think might be real. What is like your idea of what's in that cosmic flea market? So that way we can end this video on this positive note and reflecting on it as if, sure, the body dies and yeah, we know the soul is forever, but like there's all this other cool shit that goes on the other side as well. So I think I'm going to end the video there. As always, I hope that you guys have found this video to be interesting or informative or thought-provoking. And take what resonates and leave the rest behind. And as always, until next time, stay in the high vibration.